Welcome to FedScoop TV. I'm Whitney Wyckoff. Here with me now at the 2016 MobileGov Summit is Beth Beck. Beth is the Open Innovation Program Manager at NASA. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Now, we keep hearing about this data tsunami. Is your agency being overwhelmed by this just incredible amount of data that it has to deal with, and what are you doing to keep your head above water?
So we actually are part of that data tsunami because we're going into the heavens and we're with all of our missions and we're gathering data. So it's not so much the data that's around us, but it's how for each of our missions, we go off and we're bringing all this data down, we're streaming it, we have to archive it, we have to collect it, and then do the analysis and the assessment. So one of the things that we really are trying to wrap our arms around with is kind of the big data insights, not so much the big data, because we've had big data ever since NASA was born, but it's more of the what assets do we have. It's data is our treasure, so how can we get more insights from not just for the mission. So if we have data for one mission, then the PIs for the principal investigators will get their data and then they write their papers and they're done. But there's so much more from that data that new eyes can bring new insights. And then the other thing we're looking at is how can we have our data talk to other data sets and other agencies and other countries. And then for open data, we're trying to set that data free. So not only do our scientists have it, but other citizens can come in and get new insights and then help us know more about our data. So it's an exciting opportunity to have so much data. It isn't overwhelming if you think about, how if we keep collecting more data, where do we put it and what do we throw away? And that is the big issue, is like, how do you decide if someone has created a product on a version A of data, but now we have version B and version C because we've added more insights and we've collected more and we've added more. If you get rid of version A, then the person who's created a product on it, their product is no longer valid. So for the government, those are issues that we don't have the funding to store everything, but if people have created something that they've got their livelihood of, and we get rid of it for funding reasons, then, so those are all the things that we in the government have to work on, is how do we keep the authoritative source of data so we know the most updated, but also know who's using the data so we're not turning off a data stream for someone that is all of a sudden their business goes bust, which is not what the government is all about.
Right.
So yeah, it's an exciting time, and we love data, and I think people love our data too. So it's a really great place to be for NASA. But I think a lot of things we're dealing with, there's just not enough recognition of what it takes. Like there's not enough funding to be able to deal with data. Data is not a sexy topic for when you're dealing with missions. Going to an asteroid or doing something, that's the exciting part. And then when you talk about the data for it, it's like, oh, fine. But it's the spacecraft and it's the fuel to get there, and it's like, who's going to man this or woman the spacecraft? These are issues that we see that Congress is much more interested in, and then the data that goes along with it, which is equally as important. That's why we go, or more important. That's why we go. And then it's just how do we deal with that? So yeah, there's a lot of nuances to the data question, but we're tackling them, at least trying.
Yeah, and so relatedly, what are you doing to really make that data work best for you, for your agency?
Well, it works for our agency. So the thing about data, as I try to explain to people, data is the output of the mission. So we go out into the universe and get the data. So then our scientists and our engineers use that data and we leverage it. So that's return on investment number one. And then for open data, that's when we put our data out in data sets, rapid and challenges, which is what we do for the International Space Apps Challenge. We don't just put data sets out. We say, here's a challenge that you might want to use this data for X reason. Show us what you can do with it. So that is return on investment number two. Then the thing we're really interested in, and is much, much harder, is how do we take that product or the idea or the solution that's created by citizens and bring it back into NASA. That's data use number three, to bring it back in. So if we can continue, and then there's all these other uses of data, so that if we work with other agencies and we can work alongside NIH or USDA or some other agencies, and we take our data, put it with their data, and we get even more insights, and we use those for international reasons, or we use it for humanitarian purposes. There's no end to the values of data. So NASA, we're really good at using our data because we're collecting and getting, and we spend decades creating missions to go get that data. So we're really good at that. It's all these other, return on investments and the other purposes. That's where there's not a mandate really to do that, and it's more of people with vision who say there's so much more, and we want to make sure that we have the value that we can get all, we kind of squeeze out all the value that we can get from our data, and then let people keep squeezing that data.
Yeah, right, yeah. And so, and you've mentioned, you've talked about this, but how important is open data for the citizens of the U.S. and how can they best interact with the data that you have to offer?
I think there are different views on that. So open data, some people, the developer community consumes open data.
Right.
So for the developer community, which is small when you think of the whole kind of universe of people, so they're kind of scarfing up the data. For the normal citizens, as I would call the rest of us, who don't kind of live and eat and breathe on data, how the citizens use the data, I think they need just putting data sets out, as we've learned we helped create the climate.data.gov website, and because NASA was put in the lead of that, and what we learned is we put all these data sets with all these different agencies, work closely with the agencies, we have different themed communities for that data. Just putting it's like if you build it, they will come. That's not exactly how it works with data. So having all that data on the website, people aren't flocking to that website. So what we really need to think about is, learn about our communities, which we're really trying to do. Space Apps is a really good way to teach us what our community cares about. As we every year, this year we had 15,000 participants in 161 countries.
Wow.
161 locations, 61 countries for this weekend hackathon that we had in April. And so they're really showing us what are the most popular challenges. They show us what data is the most value, and our most popular challenges are the Earth-based challenges. So people take our Earth science data, and then they create it. They create different solutions and apps and web-based tools to help their communities. So that really, I think, our data is really valuable. The Earth science data also, of course, all of our data is valuable. Our space science data, all the data is valuable. But for uses on Earth, the Earth science data is a really good way for us to start engaging with our communities and say, how can we take this data about the melting glaciers, how does that affect your properties? So if you're going to have sea level rise, should you know about it? How does that affect the insurance rates? Do you sell your house now? Do you really sell it to someone else if you think there's going to be sea level rise? There's all these kind of policy issues that local governments can use the data for, but then citizens can also use the data about the quality of air in their city, and if the quality of air through these apps that we're creating with the data and the crowdsourced data collection, which we do a lot with Space Apps, is like you go out and collect data for us, we'll marry it with our data, our Earth science data from satellites, and you'll be able to know more about your community. Now, what do you do with that? You citizen, what do you do with that data? Do you go, everyone start your own business, which would be awesome, but you go talk to local government. Do you change the insurance rates? Do you change the way, do you, build seawalls? There's so many things that we could do. It's just, that's actually not our job, NASA. It's not our job to do that. But what we can do is just make it available and help people see what would you do with this data, and then we'll help give you more of that data if we can. And so that's what we're trying this, it's not even a two-way conversation, it's this really synergistic conversation with the public to say, if you like this data, we can add more tools to that data, we can add more layers to the data, tell us what you're looking for, and if it's within the scope of what we can do, for an unfunded mandate.
Yes.
We will, because we really want people to use our data. But our number one mission is to go to the heavens, peer down on Earth, learn what we can learn. That's what we're authorized and appropriated to do. All these other things are really wonderful, like icing on the cake. So we're really thrilled, and I'm thrilled to be in the open government program, the open data program, that we can be creative about how we kind of package our data and use it, and how we learn from the public, because that's what it's all about, learning. We serve the citizens. We are public servants, so our job is to make sure that they have what they need within the scope of what we have bandwidth to do.
Well, gosh, it's amazing that data from NASA might, it seems like it may not have any bearing on insurance rates, but it's just incredible how much, just the sheer amount of data that NASA has and what kind of impact it might have on the average person.
It's how it's applied. So it takes creative citizens to make a difference too. So, you know, how can citizens take what we have put out there and then use it for their own good? Because again, the government's about public good, so our job is to make sure that the public, you know, has the tools that you need to, you know, make life good.
Right. Well, great. Sounds like you have a lot of great, interesting stuff going on at NASA. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us,
Thank you for having me.
Great. For more videos, visit our website at fedscoop.com. For FedScoop TV, I'm Whitney Wyckoff. Thanks for watching.